Okay there riders, Moto Journo Kris here today. Let's have a look at doing tighter U-turns on the KTM 390 Adventure. For a lot of people, this is going to be one of the testing criteria when you get to doing one of your riding tests, and I hate U-turns. I avoid them as much as I can, so I'm not an expert, but let's do some and I'll talk you through it, tell you what I'm doing hopefully right, most definitely wrong, and might give you a bit of an idea of really what's going to be involved for you and perhaps what you can work on. Get that bike into first gear. It's clear, no one else is here. I'm going to try and turn from more. Should probably plan that out a bit better. Ideally, I'm using the car parking spot lines as a reference point. You can feel those revs really dropping down. This is not a tight one. And go from outside of one line, 2 spots across to outside the other line, I think is probably a nice judgment. That was too wide. Try that again. So I'm balancing throttle, rear brake, and a tiny little bit of clutch, which can help keep those revs running and stop the bike from bogging down and stalling. And I'm also obviously having to turn those bars quite aggressively and balance the bike to suit. I think carrying a bit of speed is better, but whoa, that was not good. You don't want to kick the power in and out, because that's going to unsettle the bike pretty drastically. I just did it again, which is why that was a 3 wide U-turn. You want to keep nice and smooth power. Turn. Ugh. Alright, so some of those were not amazing, but let's say acceptable. Ideally, you want to be doing your U-turn in 2 parking spots like this, because that's the width of a 2-lane road, which is the most likely situation where you're going to have to do a U-turn and you've got limited space. If the shoulders of the road fall away or there's gutters or anything like that, if you mess it up, it's not good. And that's why they want you to be able to do this. So you should be able to do U-turn in the width of a 2-lane road, like a 2-direction road. And keeping in mind again, because there could be cars parked on either side of the road, so you need to turn in them. There's lots and lots of tricks and ways of doing a turnaround without having to do a U-turn, which I'll cover separately, because that's what I do. But essentially speaking, when you're using those, you're avoiding building up a skill, which is quite important. Believe me, as someone who is probably the expert in crashing on U-turns. So, putting everything kind of together, we're using a little bit of clutch. On the Ninja 400, in comparison to the 390 Adventure, I don't really need the clutch. It's just an easier bike to do U-turns on and to ride at low speeds. The single cylinder is quite lumpy, so you do actually need to keep those revs up, because you'll get that, kind of a lot more easily than on something like the Ninja 400, which is just smoother, which makes this bike a little bit more challenging. You need to keep the throttle open, you need to keep the power on, and you're using the rear brake to control the power so that it's a nice and smooth turn, and you're not using any front brake at all. And then apart from that, you're also, of course, having to turn those bars, essentially almost a full lock, and you're shifting your weight a little bit, obviously, to keep the bike balanced, to keep the bike upright, so that you're not, obviously, dropping the bike. Now, the real risks, I guess I would say, is that when you've got it at full lock, if you drop the power or put the power on, that's when you tend to kind of see the bike fold and fall over. Apart from that, you want to keep your speed low enough that you're in control, but high enough that it's a nice easy arc through your U-turn. Because if you don't do that, if you suddenly start needing to add power, not ideal. You can kind of coast through a U-turn just on the momentum you've got, but again, it's not a great kind of strategy to rely on, because if your momentum isn't quite right, it's not going to work. And also, keeping the power on keeps the bike upright, so it helps the bike stand up, whereas kind of just rolling is a lot less steady, so keep that in mind. So we'll do a couple of more practices, and you can give me your thoughts down below in the comments as to what I'm doing wrong, because guaranteed there's plenty. Always a good idea to put the bike in gear. Oh, it's stalled. We've just dealt with a stalling issue, and I'm really hoping that after replacing the spark plug it doesn't come back, but let's see how we go. Okay. Super U-turn. Oh, that was pretty good. Could be pretty proud of that one. Not great, but you know, like, within reason. I'm almost in the lines in these ones, which is probably the better aim. And I'm not making excuses, but you know, not all of these spots are the same width. Oh. So on that one, I could really feel that I didn't have enough power in the bike, but it was turning in the arc. And again, because I'm a more experienced rider, I'm probably able to do this where, you know, this would be stressing out someone. I'll just do this one in 3. Talking too much. What would stress out a new rider when they feel like the control's like not exactly what they want? I've just been riding longer, so I'm kind of more used to that. And that's why I might be making this look easy in like a really buffoonery way, but it'll probably be a little bit harder if you don't have 15 years riding experience. Who would have thought? But there we go. Now I have not done 10,000 U-turns to master this skill, because I hate U-turns. But practicing is a really good idea to basically build up these skills. You definitely want to be doing U-turns as a new rider, because it's an important skill. There are, like I said, there are so many ways of avoiding doing U-turns entirely. But you're trying to learn how to ride properly, so don't do that. And I'll show you some tricks in a separate video of what you can do to avoid actually doing U-turns. But for now, you definitely need to practice, because if you're having to do that in a test, you need to show some competency in that skill, and you'll appreciate being able to do it. A couple of things I will note. Doing a U-turn from a standstill with someone on the back of the bike, I would not recommend. I would recommend doing the U-turn and then getting them to sit on the back of the bike, because someone shifting around on the back of the bike when you're trying to do a really tight U-turn, not good. Speaking from experience. On some of like the touring bikes and stuff like that, it's actually really easy, but on other bikes, you just don't want to try it. Do the U-turn, then get the person on the back. Apart from that, I will say that the 390 Adventure is not the easiest bike to do U-turns on. I got a Ninja 400, it's easier. I think on the Svartpilen 400, it's actually quite a bit easier too. This has got a bit of a more lumpy kind of feel to the engine, where even the Svartpilen is a bit smoother. And that's just how they've tuned it, I think, because that's probably preferable for an adventure setting. But this bike is just not as easy to do a U-turn on. So if you're on something like this, you might just find it a little bit more challenging. And again, the reason I say that is because I've tried it on the Ninja 400, I've tried it on the Svartpilen 400, I've tried it on the 390 Adventure. Out of those 3 bikes, which are the 3 that I have access to at the moment, this is definitely not the easiest of those options. If you got any questions, let me know down below. As always, stay safe out there. Thanks for watching, and I'll be back soon.